This is the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And this is the newly released Xiaomi 15 Ultra. Let's find out how they stack up against each other when it comes to the camera performance. Preference, a thing that becomes something of the past when, basically we're looking at the same brands facing off against each other. But that really isn't the full story here. Today we are comparing the Xiaomi 15 Ultra against the beast from last year, the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And yes, while it may look like a straightforward comparison, there are some important changes that could make a big difference. Let's start with something that you probably already noticed: the main sensor. This change could really impact the daytime photography, and that is the variable aperture, or should I say the lack of it, on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra had an f-stop range between 1.6 to 4, but on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, it's locked at that 1.6 all the time. Now, why does this matter? Well, the 14 Ultra had the ability to adjust that f-stop, not just for the Pro mode settings, but also automatically during the daytime shots as well. This little feature makes a big difference. The 14 Ultra could block some of that harsh light coming in, and in turn it helped creating deeper and darker shadows. You know that signature Leica style? Xiaomi nailed that look pretty well on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. But with the 15 Ultra, that feature is gone. That balance, that ability to block some of that light just isn't there anymore. So what does that mean for your daytime photography? Well, you have to do some manual adjusting. Specifically, use that EV option. On the 14 Ultra, I typically set it to 0 to -0.3 when it comes to especially the periscope. But with the 15 Ultra, after testing it a lot in Amsterdam and of course some open air museum shots, I found that often that adjustment needs to be at 0.7 in the minus, or even lower depending on the situation. When you look at these shots, it's clear, the brightness of the images is a noticeable difference between the two. Don't get me wrong, the 15 Ultra has its strengths. That new larger periscope has a lot of potential. But the question is, was that potential worth sacrificing that variable aperture? Was that trade-off worth it? Well, I wouldn't really despair yet. If you are like me and you love that more contrasty look, there is some hope. While updates are never a guarantee and the improvement of it, the 15 Ultra definitely has a better starting point than the 14 Ultra, meaning I feel like there's more potential into it. And with how deeply computational photography is embedded in modern mobile photography, I'm sure Xiaomi can find out that balance. They will probably find a way to give us those darker shadows without that variable aperture. Let's not forget, they've done this before on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, and they can possibly bring back that magic that we know from Xiaomi. For now though, that main difference you will notice comparing the Xiaomi 15 Ultra and the 14 Ultra main sensor is that brightness. Whether that's a deal breaker for you, well, that's something only you can decide. As of whether I'll get it fixed in updates, we'll have to wait and see. And unless I find a black hole that I can travel to, I don't think I'm gonna get those answers anytime soon. Now, one thing that you don't see when it comes to comparisons like this is the experience. The experience definitely matters here when it comes to the 14 Ultra versus the 15 Ultra. With the 14 Ultra, I always have my EV at minus 0.3. Sometimes I don't even change the EV itself. But when it comes to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, especially of course switching from the main sensor to the other sensors, I keep changing that EV to get that balance where I like it to be. It's not always the case that I need to put it at minus 0.7 or minus 1 with the main sensor, and sometimes I need to put it at minus 0.3. But that switching alone the whole time over and over again just makes it more tedious in comparison, where with the 14 Ultra it's more reliable when it comes to that experience. Not to mention that the mid of variable aperture has some effect on the usability as well. And that change also affects the video in pro settings, or for instance long exposure shots. And of course the star effect that you can create on light sources with that change of the f-stop. The variable aperture is definitely a miss on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. Either way, let's continue the video and compare the Xiaomi 15 Ultra with the 14 Ultra. Of course, when we dive into the specs of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra and compare it to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, it's not just the main sensor that stands out in terms of difference. There's also a difference for this telephoto and the periscope. The native zoom on the telephoto now has changed. We now have a 70mm instead of a 75mm that we found on the 14 Ultra. And for the periscope, well, that shifted from a 120mm to a 100mm. Now realistically, I don't have any major issues with this. In fact, I actually am quite excited when you are realizing that with this periscope, we've had a massive upgrade in terms of sensor size. Going from a 1/2.51 inch sensor size to a massive 1/1.4 inch sensor size. That's one of the largest upgrades that I've seen for quite a while. Sure, the telephoto didn't get that boost in size. Heck, it's the same as before when it comes to the sensor. But the change for the periscope, that could bring some substantial upgrades to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra compared to the 14 Ultra. Now naturally you ask yourself, is that the case right now? I'd say we will need to wait and see a bit on how it pans out. But for now I'd argue that the periscope on the 15 Ultra feels a little bit held back. The sharpening it produces, as I mentioned in my previous comparison, isn't the same as capturing true details. This kind of actually blocks the look of the details itself. Now imagine if we had a feature where we could control that sharpness, that would be a huge benefit to all of us. It would allow me to easily adjust it to my needs and my preferences, or in your case, your preferences. But for now, that's all limited to the Pro mode. But when we compare the two, looking at the colors and the details and the overall image, it doesn't look like a giant leap forward. Keep in mind though, the 14 Ultra had time to mature, it had time to refine itself in all these kinds of situations. Meanwhile, the 15 Ultra is rocking a new sensor, and I'm sure its potential isn't fully tapped yet. And you can really see that when looking at the dynamic range control. Right now, the 14 Ultra takes the lead when it comes to the periscope and the dynamic range control on it. But what about the telephoto? Well, honestly, there isn't much that I can say here. They both perform very similarly, whether it's close-ups or for instance flower shots. Yes, there will be some slight differences between the two, but these are minimal. It's hard to notice any major shift between the two. So I'd say here, I have the least to add when it comes to comparing them directly. Simply put, this technology for this sensor is my favorite on any phone.
you.
front-facing camera on both. The Xiaomi looks quite a bit warmer, but that's logical because the lights around me are warmer. Brightness was similar, although the 14 Ultra looks a bit sharper out of the two. Also noticeable with these low light shots is that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra using the periscope, hardly any of these today are in focus. Slight movement and it has issues. Don't know why, but that's the case so far when it comes to shooting in low light with it. It's weird. Telephoto doesn't have it, and neither does the Ultra Wide or the main. Portrait mode, one of the most requested features I get on my channel, but it's also one of the hardest to master for me. When it comes to portraits, there's a lot of it that is more than just a technical aspect. A big challenge is that I often need to approach strangers, and as someone who struggles with social interactions, that's never an easy task. But at the same time, it's about something deeper. I want to capture more than just their face. It's like how I approach my building shots or nature shots. It's about capturing the essence of whatever I'm shooting. And when you're out on the street, asking for someone for a portrait, well, it's not always as simple as it sounds. You might notice, for example, that I often ask people not to look in the camera. It helps the shot to stay more natural, more real. But honestly, there are moments that makes all the difference. Like this one, when this beautiful woman agreed to have some shots taken of her. She exudes class and gave me a genuine smile, and that made all the difference. It wasn't forced, it felt natural, even though at that moment it felt quite awkward. But it made it so much better. Naturally, when taking portraits of yourself, it's not anywhere near as good. Because of course, I cannot direct those shots, I cannot see the result itself. You have to keep shooting, and at one point you just kinda give up. Having the possibility to take a portrait of someone else definitely is helpful. As for Xiaomi, their cameras haven't been known for top tier portrait shots over the past couple of years. The biggest issue? Well, skin tones. It often looks a bit off, almost flat, almost not alive. But here's the thing, the 14 Ultra did have some updates, and when it captures it right, it can capture some good portraits. Still, the white balance is sometimes a struggle. Now, the 15 Ultra is the one that brightens up the shot a lot more, which can be nice, but for me, I feel like it should be a mix between both of these when it comes to the brightness of the shot. Still, despite the improvements, I can't say that skin tones are perfect just yet. I still have that inconsistency. And truth be told, I actually find portraits to look better in black and white when it comes to Xiaomi phones. And for those who are wondering, no, it's not on the same level as the Xiaomi 13 Pro when it comes to portrait. Year after year, we see subtle shifts in camera technology. Even the smallest updates can lead to big changes in how we experience photography. And with the 15 Ultra, it's no different. But adding something significant as the periscope camera, well, that comes with its own compromises, especially when we talk about the HP9 sensor. Take the ultra wide for example. While it's not always my go-to, it's still an important feature for many people. And with the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, there are some noticeable adjustments. The sensor size is slightly reduced, and that part itself is not a huge change, but it's there. More surprising though is the decrease on how wide the lens itself captures, with it being less wide than the 14 Ultra. and it can affect the overall shot. Now for some, this won't be a huge issue, but when you are shooting wide angle shots like this one, you can start to see the difference. The 14 Ultra offered a broader field of view, letting you capture that expanse of the shot with ease. On the 15 Ultra, the effect isn't quite as striking. It loses out simply because it isn't able to capture the entirety of the scene. And in this part, I kind of want to ask you how you feel about this change. Does it affect your shooting on the ultra wide itself, or do you feel like it isn't much of a problem? Because for some, this shift in ultra wide could be a step too far. Quality wise though, the 15 Ultra holds up when it comes to the ultra wide. It's just that shift of field of view might be a trade-off that is harder to accept for some others. Ultimately, it's not just about the specs. It's about those small changes that influence the way that we capture the world around us.
Okay, 60 frames per second above. Definitely the Xiaomi 15 is more saturated. 3.2 times zoom. Zoom in the birds. 4.3, 5. I'd say the sky itself is a little bit better on the 15 Ultra. The ground a bit closer on the 14 Ultra. Let's go to inside. Zoom in again. 4.3, 5. Of course, manually it can go to 5. It's here, but that's not the native length. However, a real benefit is that while I'm scrolling like this, can quickly still swap between different lenses. But the 14 doesn't have that. video both 60 frames per second. Definitely in terms of the white balance, the 14 is actually the better. You can of course switch the lenses. This one is hard to say. I do like the contrast better on the 15 though. 3.2 versus 3. 5 versus 4.3. Ooh, actually 14 Ultra has a bit better balance, especially if you look at those signs on the right side. Back to 1. Definitely a better white balance on the 14 now. Like it has a bit of that warmth that we have in our city. With the 15 Ultra doesn't have that at all.
So this is the end of the comparison between the Xiaomi 15 Ultra and the 14 Ultra. It's never easy to compare two phones that are similar, yet have so many different changes. Realistically, if you have the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, updating to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra doesn't have much use to it. But for those who of course don't have either of these, which one should you get? Well, it depends. The potential between these two really shifts in what your needs are. The 14 Ultra with its main sensor and the variable aperture leads to situations where you just have that more professional gear where you can change around settings that you cannot on the 15 Ultra. That being said, on the other hand, when it comes to the 15 Ultra, you do have that possibility of using that newer but also far larger periscope. The potential of that periscope is simply higher. If those are your needs, then the 15 Ultra makes more sense than the 14 Ultra. So realistically, if you have the 14 Ultra, I don't really see a use. If you don't have either of them, it really depends on your needs. Either way, let me know what you think about this comparison. And of course, if you did enjoy this different style of editing, let me know in the comments below, because this is the second time that I'm trying it, of course, to see how it would be in terms of like a YouTube video, to make it more interesting and more compelling for people to watch it longer. Because I really feel like if you have images and you just put them side by side with a little bit of music, it gets boring after quite a short time. And I really want to make it more of a story and more of an experience base. For me, I think both of these are just simply capable devices, but it really depends on your needs, and both of them have the strength and the weaknesses. Either way, before we go, I really want to thank my members. Thank you so much. Gained some new ones, thank you. And of course, if you want to become a member, click join below. I will add some raw files on a Google Drive that you members can download as well and check them out. Either way, if you aren't subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe, like the video and so on. And talk to you guys in the next.